Well, still staying on the topic of the US role in the world, we've discussed it in China and also in Russia, and we know that over the past 10 years or more, America's been mired in war in Iraq and Afghanistan and could well be dragged into yet another conflict, this time on the Korean peninsula. But there is a real debate in the United States about just how involved the US should be internationally, particularly when it's facing a lot of problems, political and financial problems, inside its own borders. Can the United States afford, apart from anything else, to continue to be the world's policeman? Let's bring in Adam Lockyer now from the Centre for Independent Studies and a US analyst, and we'll bring up this issue with him. Adam, nice to have you on the program. You know, this is a real debate inside the United States right now, but can the US afford not to be the global power that it is?
Good to be with you, Stan. So this debate is largely occurring at the moment within the corridors of think tanks and universities. Whether or not the United States should follow a strategy of retrenchment, meaning one of rather an isolationist approach where the United States would withdraw many of its military forces and its engagements around the world, mostly because $1 spent on planes, tanks, guns is $1 that they can't spend on hospitals, bridges, schools, etc. The other side.
Where do you sit in this, Adam? Do you think that is a reasonable argument? I mean, we know they're facing enormous deficit pressures, and much of it largely caused by being involved in war for the past decade.
I think this debate's largely academic at this stage. I think that this debate is occurring within think tanks and universities, but policymakers aren't necessarily thinking this way. What they're thinking about is, well, how do we get by with less? The Congress has already decided to cut military spending over the next 10 years. They started cutting military spending a year ago. They cut $650 billion over the 10 years. With the recent sequester on the 1st of March, this is going to cut out another $480 billion over the 10 years. And so the Defence Department is already running around trying to cut to the tune of about $41 billion this year. So these cuts are already going to happen no matter what. And now, where do they cut from? Now, the sequester says they have to cut across the board. I think Congress is going to come back and say that defence can introduce these cuts in a more flexible way, in which case what will happen is that the cuts will come most likely from Europe and from reductions in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're unlikely to see the large-scale cuts across the board in our region.
And yet there is, for all of the cuts, there is a reality that the US military is a giant compared to all others and still vastly outspends all other military spending in the major economies around the world. In fact, there is an argument that a lot of the US allies hang off the coattails of the United States, that effectively outsource their own military spending and their own defence needs to the US, and Australia's been accused of doing just that. Why should the US carry the load and potentially be dragged into conflict because of these alliances that it has?
Because it gets to control the game. It invents the rules of the game, whether it's on military alliances, political alliances, or even coming to economic negotiations. If it has forces around the world and it is largely subsidising, as you say, the defence of its allies, it decides the rules of the game. So when it's in negotiations with rising countries like China, but not just China, Indonesia, Vietnam, right across the region, it's saying that when you enter these great power status, as you rise, you must play by the rules of the game. Oh, by the way, the rules of the game are what we decide they are.
We also know that countries like China and Russia can use those rules of the game. They do this at the UN Security Council against the United States anyway. We've seen the US vulnerability to attack, as we saw in 9/11, and the limits of US power in the Middle East and also to an extent in Afghanistan. So again, you come back to this argument, well, what do we actually get out of this? Is it really worth the cost?
This is true, and when we're talking about the rules of the game, this is one of the criticism that the United States is getting when it's talking about its drone strikes. At the moment, it's basically got a monopoly on the use of drones around the world, but it's deciding what the rules of the game are going to be. So in the very near future, other countries like China, possibly North Korea, Russia, are going to start to fly drones around the place, and how the United States has decided to use drones are going to be the rules that the international community are going to abide by when other countries start to use them as well. So the United States has to be very careful about, as it sets up its international framework, well, how are the states that follow it in its footsteps are going to play the same game.
Adam, of course there is the potential for the US once again to be dragged into other conflicts because of the alliances that it has, whether it be a flashpoint like the China and Japan territorial dispute, or whether it be something right on the headlines right now, of course, which is the increased tension on the Korean Peninsula. Do the American people, apart from anything else, really have the stomach for this when, as you've pointed out, they're facing issues at home with health, education, housing, jobs and so on?
I think that the American people have no stomach for nation building, counterinsurgency, getting involved with civil wars. And this is why the United States is so aloof when it's dealing with Syria at the moment. When it's dealing with other situations such as Japan, China, North Korea, South Korea, then I think that the American people are far more forthcoming with giving the government a longer leash in order to be engaged with these sort of interstate conflicts, rather internal conflicts.
Dr. Adam Lockyer, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thanks very much for joining us once again.
Thank you.